She only wanted a quiet afternoon with her children. A simple meal, laughter, and a little break from the storms of life. But that day, as she stepped into the restaurant with her kids, everything changed. Within minutes, she was dragged out in front of them by men in uniform, her children's cries echoing across the street. Strangers froze. Some recorded, some whispered. But what no one realized was that someone was watching, and their presence would turn this injustice into something unforgettable. Comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, like, and share, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The story begins not with chaos, but with silence. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when sunlight streams through the blinds and children's laughter fills the air like music. For Angela Johnson, a 32-year-old mother of two, Sundays were sacred. Not because of luxury or rest. She rarely had either. But because it was the only day she wasn't racing between her job at the laundry service and late-night shifts at the diner. Angela's life was a routine of sacrifice. Every dollar was counted, every meal stretched, every hour of sleep stolen. But when it came to her children, she never let them feel the weight she carried. Maya, 7 years old, with her wild curls and endless questions, and Jordan, 4 years old, always clutching a toy car in his small hands. They were her world, her reason to keep fighting. That morning, Angela had promised them something small, but special, lunch at the new family diner downtown. To her children, it was more than a meal, it was magic. Pancakes stacked high, syrup dripping down the sides, French fries served in shiny baskets. To Angela, it was a chance to give them a memory brighter than the struggles waiting outside their front door. She dressed them carefully. Maya wore her yellow sundress, the one Angela had found at a thrift store, but washed and mended until it looked brand new. Jordan had on his green t-shirt with a cartoon rocket ship, a shirt he insisted made him faster. Angela herself wore a red blouse, one of the few clothes she owned that made her feel confident. She held their little hands as they walked down the sidewalk, the sun warm on their backs, the city alive with chatter and car horns. As they entered the diner, Angela noticed the room shift, not with sound but with silence. Heads turned. Some smiles flickered politely. Others lingered too long, cold and unwelcome. She was used to it. Being a black mother in a neighborhood where faces like hers were few often meant enduring stares, whispers, or the invisible weight of judgment. She ignored it, focusing only on her children. "Pick anything you like," she told them with a smile as they slid into a booth near the window. Maya pressed her face against the menu like it was a treasure map. Jordan tapped his toy car on the table, giggling. For a moment, it felt normal. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. But moments like these rarely lasted. Across the diner, a manager whispered to a waiter. Their eyes darted toward Angela's booth, then quickly away. Angela noticed, though she pretended not to. She knew the pattern, the hushed words, the subtle glances. It wasn't new, but it always burned. Still, she kept her focus on her kids. The waiter approached, pen and pad in hand, but his smile was tight, rehearsed. "What'll it be?" he asked flatly. Maya ordered pancakes with extra syrup. Jordan asked for fries. Angela chose a simple coffee. The waiter scribbled quickly and left without another word. Maya leaned across the table, whispering, "Mommy, why didn't he smile?" Angela forced a laugh, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Maybe he's just tired, baby. Don't worry." But worry she did. Outside the window, life carried on. Cars rushing, people walking dogs, children riding bikes. Inside, Angela felt a storm brewing. She glanced around again. A group of customers in the corner were watching her. One of them muttered something under their breath, and the others chuckled. Angela's chest tightened. She swallowed her pride, reminding herself, it's just lunch. Don't ruin it for the kids. 10 minutes later, the food arrived, but not with care, not with joy. The plates were set down with a clatter, coffee sloshing onto the table. "There you go," the waiter muttered before walking off. Angela grabbed a napkin to wipe the spill, her hands steady even as her heart raced. She tried to focus on her children's excitement, the way Maya's eyes widened at the stack of pancakes, the way Jordan dunked his fries and giggled. But then it happened. A shadow fell across their table. Angela looked up to see the manager, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Ma'am," he began, voice cold. "We've had some complaints." Angela blinked. "Complaints? About what?" The manager shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if searching for backup. "Other customers, they're uncomfortable. We'll have to ask you to leave." The words cut through Angela like glass. Her children froze. Maya clutched her fork, eyes wide. Jordan's toy car slipped from his hands onto the floor. "Leave? We've done nothing wrong," Angela said, her voice calm but trembling beneath the surface. The manager's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm not going to argue. Please collect your things and go." Angela's mind raced. Not here. Not in front of them. She looked at her children, their faces etched with confusion and fear. She thought of all the nights she had worked just to afford this moment. She thought of how many times she had swallowed humiliation for the sake of survival. But this time, the humiliation wasn't hers alone. It was theirs too. "Please," Angela whispered, almost to herself. "We're just trying to eat." But the manager didn't move. And in that moment, 2 police officers entered the diner. Their uniforms gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Angela's stomach dropped. The manager waved them over. "That's the table." The officers approached, their presence heavy, suffocating. One of them spoke firmly. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Angela's voice cracked. "Why? What have I done?" The officer didn't answer. He reached for her arm, and that's when Maya screamed, "Don't take my mommy." Jordan burst into tears, clutching at Angela's leg. The diner fell silent. Phones came out. People whispered. Some smirked, others looked away. Angela's world blurred. The officers pulled her up, her children crying, clinging, their voices breaking against the cold silence of strangers. Her red blouse caught in the officer's grip, her dignity unraveling with every step. And as they dragged her toward the door, Angela thought only one thing. Not in front of them. Please, not in front of them. What neither she nor anyone else realized was that outside, someone was watching, and what they would do next would change everything. The diner door banged shut behind her, the sound ringing louder than the chaos inside. Angela stumbled forward, the grip on her arm unrelenting. Maya's cries echoed through the glass as she banged her tiny fists on the window, screaming for her mother. Jordan pressed his face to the glass, tears streaking down his cheeks, his little voice barely audible. Angela's heart split in two. Every instinct told her to protect her children, to shield them from the nightmare unfolding. But her arms were pinned, her voice drowned beneath the weight of authority. The officers spoke in clipped tones, their words more procedure than compassion. "Step outside, ma'am. You're causing a disturbance. This doesn't have to get worse." But to Angela, there was no greater disturbance than the sight of her children watching her be treated like a criminal. She twisted, desperate. "Please, let me explain." But the officer's hand tightened on her arm. No talking. Inside, the diner hummed with whispers. Some customers had their phones raised, recording the scene like entertainment. Others kept their heads down, unwilling to meet her gaze. And somewhere in that silence, Angela heard the faintest voice inside her scream. Why won't anyone stop this? Her children's cries cut through the air. They had followed her out, rushing through the door as the officers pulled her further onto the sidewalk. Maya clutched her mother's hand, sobbing, "Don't take her. Please don't take my mommy." Jordan wailed, tugging at Angela's leg, his toy car forgotten on the diner floor. The officers paused, their authority colliding with the raw innocence before them. For a fleeting second, their grip loosened. But then duty or pride snapped it back. "Children, step away." One barked, his voice harsh enough to make Jordan flinch. Angela's chest burned with fury and shame. Children, not your children, just children. As though her role as their mother had vanished the moment the officers decided she didn't belong. Her blouse, red and bright, now felt like a target. Every car that slowed, every pedestrian that stopped, saw not a mother, not a woman, but a scene. A spectacle. Something to be judged, debated, or ignored. Angela's voice cracked. "I haven't done anything wrong. We were just eating. But the manager's words, still fresh in her ears, had already painted her guilt. Other customers are uncomfortable. The phrase looped in her mind, mocking her. Since when had comfort been measured by the color of someone's skin? Since when did pancakes require permission? Maya tugged harder at her mother's arm. Don't let them take you, Mommy. Her small hands shook with desperation. Jordan's cries turned into hiccups of terror, his body trembling against her leg. Angela turned to the officers, her eyes blazing with something deeper than fear. Look at them, she pleaded. Look at my children. Do you see what you're doing? But their eyes slid away, focused on procedure, not humanity. The world around her blurred, until a voice cut through the tension. Hey, the sound came from across the street. Firm, loud, unshaken. The officers turned. So did Angela. And for the first time, she saw him. A man stood there, phone in hand, camera recording. He wasn't just a bystander. He was deliberate. His voice carried weight, steady and unflinching. Let her go, he said. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Strangers leaned closer, phones rising higher. The scene had shifted. Angela wasn't just a mother being dragged away anymore. She was a story unfolding. The man crossed the street slowly, never lowering his camera. You're making a mistake, he told the officers, his words sharp as glass. She hasn't done anything. I've been standing here watching. You're dragging a mother in front of her kids. For what? For sitting at a table. Angela's breath caught. Someone saw. Someone was watching. The officers stiffened. One barked back. Sir, step away. This doesn't concern you. But the man didn't flinch. He angled his phone closer, his lens capturing every detail. Oh, it concerns me. And it'll concern everyone who sees this. Do you have any idea how fast this will spread? Angela's heart raced, not just from fear, but from a flicker of something she hadn't felt since the moment the nightmare began. Hope. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Authority was their shield, but the camera pierced through it. They knew what Angela knew. The world was watching now. Maya's cries softened into sniffles, her small hand still clutching her mother's arm. Jordan buried his face against Angela's leg, his sobs quieting. Angela bent low, whispering to them, It's going to be okay. Just stay with me. Her words were shaky, but they carried the strength of a mother's promise. Still, the officers held firm. One muttered into his radio, eyes darting between Angela and the man filming. The crowd grew thicker, whispers rising into shouts. This isn't right. She's done nothing wrong. Leave her alone. Angela felt the tide shifting. For the first time, she wasn't alone. But the conflict wasn't over. It was only beginning. The manager burst from the diner, his face red, his voice shrill. She's disrupting my business. Get her out of here. His finger jabbed the air like a weapon. The man with the camera turned his lens on him. Disrupting? She was eating with her kids. Your customers complained because what? She didn't look like them? That's not disruption. That's discrimination. The word hung in the air like thunder. Discrimination. It cut deeper than any command, sharper than any order. And once spoken, it couldn't be unsaid. Angela's knees trembled. She held her children tighter. She wanted to disappear, to shield them from the storm. But she also wanted to stand tall, to prove that they mattered, that she mattered. The officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, we still need you to come with us until this is sorted. Angela's voice rose, louder than she expected. No, not without my children. Not like this. The crowd roared in agreement. She's right. She hasn't done anything. Let her go. Phones lit up, cameras flashed, voices united. What began as whispers had become a wave. And through it all, Angela felt her children's arms wrapped around her, their tiny bodies trembling, their voices muffled against her blouse. She was still their mother, still their protector. And now, for the first time that day, she wasn't invisible. Someone was watching. Many were watching. And the conflict had turned public. What would happen next would change not only Angela's life, but the lives of everyone who saw that video. The crowd had grown into a sea of faces. What started as a few whispers in the corner of the diner had spilled out onto the sidewalk, until dozens of strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, watching, filming, murmuring. Angela stood at the center, her children clutching her tightly, her red blouse wrinkled from the officer's grip, her heart hammered against her chest, torn between fear and fury. For years, she had swallowed silence. She had smiled when insulted. She had walked away when pushed. She had taught herself to stay invisible, because invisibility sometimes meant survival. But now, with Maya and Jordan sobbing against her side, with strangers watching and filming, with the world turning its gaze toward her, she realized something. She could no longer be invisible. The officer holding her arm tightened his grip. His jaw was clenched, his posture stiff. He wanted control. He needed to end this scene before it slipped too far from his hands. "Ma'am," he said in a low voice, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." Angela met his eyes for the first time. Her voice shook, but her words carried the weight of a mother's pain. "You're dragging me out here in front of my children. Do you even hear them? Do you see them? Do you know what you're doing to them?" Her words cracked in the air. For a moment, silence fell. Even the crowd seemed to hold its breath. Then a voice from the sidewalk broke it. "She's right." It was the man with the phone again, stepping closer, his camera steady. His voice rang with certainty. "You're traumatizing children. For what? For sitting in a diner? Everyone here can see it. Everyone here is recording it. You're not just arresting her. You're tearing a family apart in broad daylight." The officer shifted, uneasy. His partner, standing just behind him, cleared his throat. "We should wait for backup," he muttered, his voice quieter, almost uncertain. But the first officer shook his head. "No, we finished this now." Angela's children clung tighter. Maya's voice cracked through her tears. "Mommy, don't let go. Please don't let go." Angela bent low, kissing her daughter's hair, whispering, "I'm not letting go. I promise. I'm right here." The promise wasn't just for her children. It was for herself. She stood straighter, her body trembling, but her eyes burning. "If you're going to take me," she said, her voice rising loud enough for the crowd to hear, "then you take my children too, because I will not let them watch their mother be dragged away." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones zoomed closer. The man with the camera whispered, almost to himself, "That's it. That's the truth right there." The manager's face turned red, his voice shrill. "This is outrageous. Officers, do your job. Get her off my property now." But his words were drowned out by another voice, this time from the crowd. "No, leave her alone." Then another, "She hasn't done anything wrong." And then a chorus, "This isn't right. Let her go. Shame on you." The street, once filled with silence, now erupted with chants. Dozens of voices rose as one, a wall of sound pushing back against the authority of two uniforms and one bitter manager. The officers froze. Their grip on Angela faltered. Power had shifted. It was no longer in their hands. It was in the hands of the people, the witnesses, the cameras, the voices. Angela felt it. The air itself seemed to shift. For the first time that day, she wasn't shrinking beneath judgment. She was standing in the center of it, unbroken, unyielding. The officer muttered under his breath, "This is getting out of control." The man with the camera stepped even closer, his voice firm. "It's already out of your control. Every second you hold her is another second the world will judge you. You want headlines? You want millions of people seeing this? Because that's what's coming." The officer's hand trembled against Angela's arm. His partner tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently, "Let her go. Now." But before he could answer, something unexpected happened. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, middle-aged, dressed neatly, holding her phone high. Her voice was calm, but it carried authority. "I'm a lawyer," she announced, "and I am witnessing an unlawful detainment. Release her immediately." The crowd gasped again, energy pulsing like a current. The officers stiffened, their authority collapsing beneath the weight of law and witness. Angela's children clutched tighter. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer she hadn't dared to speak. "Please, let this end. Please protect them." The officer's grip loosened. Slowly, reluctantly, his hand fell away from her arm. Angela stumbled back, pulling her children into her arms, holding them as if she could fuse them into her very soul. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Some shouted words of encouragement. Others shouted at the officers, anger pouring out like fire. But Angela didn't hear them. She only heard the sound of her children's sobs against her chest, felt their tiny arms wrapping around her neck. She kissed their hair again and again, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere." The man with the camera lowered his phone, his face softening as he looked at her. "It's not over," he said gently, "but you're not alone anymore." Angela looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, not just of pain, but of gratitude. For years, she had carried her battles alone. But in that moment, she realized something profound. When one person stands up, others will follow. The climax wasn't just the struggle. It was the shift from silence to voice, from invisibility to presence, from isolation to community. And as Angela held her children close, surrounded by strangers who had become allies, she knew the fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, she believed she could win. The video was only a few minutes long, but a few minutes was all it took to change everything. By nightfall, it was everywhere, across social media feeds, splashed on news sites, whispered in workplaces, replayed on television screens. The image of a black mother being dragged in front of her crying children was seared into the public's mind. Angela didn't know it yet. At that moment, she was sitting on the edge of her bed, holding Maya and Jordan close, their small bodies finally drifting into uneasy sleep. She smoothed their hair, her own hands trembling. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't spoken much since they returned home. Her red blouse lay crumpled on the floor, a silent witness to the humiliation she'd endured. She thought she wanted silence, but silence didn't come. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from numbers she didn't know. Messages from people she had never met. Notifications stacked one after another. At first, she ignored them. She wanted nothing more than to protect her children from the chaos, to shield them from a world that had already shown them too much cruelty. But eventually, curiosity forced her to look. The first video she opened made her breath catch. It was her voice, her children's cries, the officer's grip on her arm, the man's voice shouting, "Let her go." The lawyer stepping forward, commanding, "Release her immediately." And in the moment, the officer loosening his grip, the crowd cheering, her children wrapping their arms around her. It was all there. And it wasn't just a video. It was a story, one the world had claimed as its own. The comments scrolled endlessly. "This broke my heart. Those poor kids. This is why we fight for justice. Stay strong, Mama. We're with you." Angela's eyes filled with tears. She had felt so alone on that sidewalk, like the whole world was against her. But here, through a screen, strangers were standing with her. Yet not every comment was kind. Some were cruel, sharp as knives. She must have done something, always playing the victim. People like her just want attention. Angela's stomach twisted. She wanted to throw the phone away. But then another notification appeared, this time from a name she recognized. Her cousin, who lived in another state. "Angie, I saw the video. I can't believe this happened to you. I'm proud of you for standing strong. We're all here for you." Angela clutched the phone to her chest, her tears spilling freely now. For so long, she had carried her burdens quietly. She had hidden her pain, convinced no one would understand. But now the world couldn't look away. The next morning, reporters gathered outside her apartment. Their voices buzzed like bees, questions flying the moment she stepped outside. "Angela, how do you feel about what happened? Do you plan to press charges? What do you want to say to the officers involved?" Angela froze. The weight of their cameras felt as heavy as the officer's grip had been. She wanted to run back inside to hide. But then she saw Maya peeking out from behind the curtain, her small face pale with worry. Jordan stood beside her, clutching his toy car. Angela realized something. If she ran, if she hid, the story wouldn't end. It would be told by others, twisted by strangers, defined by people who didn't know her truth. If she wanted her children to grow up believing their mother was strong, not broken, she had to speak. So she straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and faced the crowd. "I'm not here because I wanted to be," she began, her voice steady though her hand shook. I'm here because what happened to me and to my children was wrong. We were humiliated. We were treated as if we didn't belong. But no mother should ever have to hold her children while being dragged out in front of strangers. No child should have to cry, begging for their mother to stay. We didn't deserve this. Nobody does. Her words weren't rehearsed. They weren't polished. They were raw, honest, human. And that's what made them powerful. The microphones captured every syllable. Within hours, her statement spread as fast as the video itself. But with attention came escalation. The diner issued a statement, claiming Angela had been disruptive. The manager doubled down, painting himself as the victim of unruly behavior. The officers released a report that twisted the truth, describing her as uncooperative. Angela's chest tightened as she read the words. They weren't just attacking her. They were trying to erase her reality. But she wasn't alone anymore. The lawyer who had spoken up that day reached out to her personally. Angela, you don't have to fight this by yourself, she said. I'll represent you. We'll make sure your voice is heard. Community groups rallied. Vigils were planned. Strangers sent flowers, food, letters of encouragement. Angela's small apartment filled with signs of love, reminders that even in her darkest moment, light had broken through. Yet with love came hate. Anonymous calls in the night. Messages filled with slurs. A rock thrown at her window, shattering the glass. Maya screamed. Jordan cried. And Angela found herself holding them close again, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The escalation was real. The world had noticed her, but not all of the world wanted her story told. Angela sat awake one night, staring at the broken glass still scattered on the floor. Her children slept fitfully in the next room. She felt fear gnawing at her, the temptation to step back, to let it all fade. But then she remembered the moment on the sidewalk, the officer's grip, her daughter's scream, her son's tears. And she remembered the voice that had cut through the chaos. Let her go. Someone had stood up for her when she couldn't stand for herself. Now, it was her turn to stand. For her children, for others who couldn't, for herself. The escalation wasn't just about the media or the crowds. It was about a choice. To fight or to fold. And Angela chose to fight. That decision lit the fuse. The story moved beyond her city, beyond her state. National news anchors debated her name. Hashtags trended. Celebrities tweeted in support. Politicians argued. Protesters filled the streets with signs that read, "Justice for Angela." Her children's faces, once streaked with tears in the diner window, became symbols of innocence betrayed. Her own image, kneeling on the sidewalk, clutching them tightly, became a banner of resilience. But every headline, every protest, every chant carried weight. And with weight came responsibility. Angela wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a voice, a symbol, a story. And symbols, once created, cannot go back to being ordinary. The courthouse steps were crowded with cameras, microphones, and voices that refused to quiet down. Some chanted Angela's name. Others held signs painted in bold colors. Justice for Angela. Protect mothers. In the silence, Angela stood at the center of it all, her children's small hands in hers. Maya, in her yellow dress, held her head high, though her eyes darted nervously at the crowd. Jordan clutched his toy car tightly, the way he always did when the world felt too big. Angela's heart pounded, but her face was steady. For weeks, her life had been chaos. Reporters, threats, messages of love and hate, protests echoing outside her window. But now, here she stood, no longer hidden, no longer silent. Her lawyer's voice was calm beside her. Are you ready? Angela swallowed hard. I have to be. The courthouse doors opened, and the crowd surged forward. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched out. The questions flew like arrows. Angela, do you believe justice will be served? What do you want to say to the officers involved? How has this affected your children? Angela paused, her voice soft but firm. This isn't just about me. This is about every mother who has ever been made to feel small. Every child who has cried watching something they should never have seen. We came here today because the truth deserves a voice. And I won't stop until it's heard. Her words silenced the questions. For a moment, even the cameras seemed to still. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The manager sat stiffly in his suit, his jaw tight. The two officers in their uniforms avoided eye contact with the crowd. Angela sat at the front, her children just behind her, crayons and coloring books spread out to distract them. As testimony began, the video played on a large screen. Angela couldn't bring herself to watch. She only heard the sound, the officer's command, her children's cries, the man's voice shouting, "Let her go." Maya whimpered softly in her seat. Angela reached back, squeezing her daughter's hand. "It's okay, baby. We're telling the truth now." Witnesses stepped forward. The man who filmed the video spoke first. His words were steady, his conviction clear. "I saw everything. She wasn't disruptive. She wasn't loud. She was eating lunch with her kids. That's all. What happened to her was wrong." The lawyer who intervened testified next. Her voice carried the weight of authority. This was not law enforcement. This was humiliation. It was unlawful, unjustified, and deeply harmful. The manager shifted in his seat, sweat beading on his forehead. His attempt to justify his actions, "My customers complained. I had to keep order," crumbled under cross-examination. "Order?" the lawyer pressed. "Or prejudice?" Gasps filled the courtroom. Angela sat silently, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She wanted to shout, to cry, to rage. But instead, she breathed slowly, letting the truth speak for itself. Days stretched into weeks. Each hearing drew larger crowds, more voices of support. Community leaders spoke out. Activists rallied. Angela's name became more than a headline. It became a movement. Her children felt the weight of it too. Maya asked questions at night, her small voice trembling. "Mommy, why did they think we didn't belong? Why were they mean to us?" Angela's heart broke every time. She would pull her daughter close, stroking her hair. "Because sometimes people see only what they want to see, baby. But that doesn't mean it's the truth. You belong. You always belong. And I will fight every day to make sure you never forget that." Jordan, too young to understand fully, still clung to his mother every time they left the house. "Don't let go," he would whisper. Angela never did. Finally, the verdict came. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with expectation. Angela sat at the front, her children on either side, their hands clasped tightly in hers. The judge's voice rang out. "The court finds that Angela Johnson was subjected to unlawful discrimination and unlawful detainment. The restaurant and its manager are held accountable for their actions. The officers involved are found to have acted without proper cause, and disciplinary measures will follow." The words echoed like thunder. Angela closed her eyes, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Maya squeezed her hand. Jordan whispered, "Mommy, did we win?" Angela bent low, kissing their foreheads. "Yes, baby. We won. We finally won." The courtroom erupted in applause. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, but Angela saw none of it. She only saw her children, safe, smiling for the first time in weeks. But the resolution wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the community that rallied around her, sending food, letters, and prayers. It was in the strangers who stopped her on the street, thanking her for standing up. It was in the children at Maya's school who drew pictures of a mother holding her kids, writing underneath, "Strong like Angela." It was in the way Jordan, once so afraid, now carried his toy car with pride, telling anyone who would listen, "My mommy's brave." And most of all, it was in Angela herself. For the first time in her life, she looked in the mirror and didn't see just survival. She saw strength. She saw dignity. She saw a mother who had faced the storm and come through it unbroken. The fight had left scars, emotional ones, invisible ones, but it had also left something greater: hope. That night, Angela tucked her children into bed, their laughter filling the room again. She kissed them goodnight, whispering, "You are my everything, and no one can ever take that away." She stepped onto her balcony, the city lights glowing in the distance. She thought about the man who had lifted his phone, the woman who had spoken up, the strangers who had chanted her name. She thought about how one act of injustice had turned into a movement of voices. and she thought about tomorrow, because tomorrow there would be another mother, another child, another story. But now, Angela knew she wasn't powerless. She was proof that even the smallest voice, when raised with truth, could echo loud enough to shake the world.